Hollywood in the early 1930s was like the Wild West of romance, bold, unpredictable, and way ahead of its time. Before the studios slammed the door shut with the production code, stars lived and loved on their own rebellious terms, sparking scandals that had America buzzing. Ever wonder what happened when glamour met daring passion and no one cared about rules? Hang tight, because these wild romances rewrote the book on love, scandal, and showbiz drama. Clara Bo and Rex Bell. Clara Bo wasn't just a star, she was the it girl, the ultimate symbol of the roaring 20s. Known for her carefree spirit, quick wit, and that dazzling flapper charm, Clara was Hollywood's wild child, owning the silver screen with her fearless, magnetic energy. But when she fell for Rex Bell, a rugged cowboy actor with a quiet demeanor, the public got one heck of a surprise. Bo's romance with Bell was the kind of story Hollywood hadn't seen before. Here was Clara, the embodiment of the modern woman, dancing, laughing, and owning her freedom, pairing up with a man who represented old-fashioned American grit. Their relationship flipped the script. It wasn't just about glitz and glam, but a real connection that defied expectations. They married in 1931, right as the industry was about to tighten the reins with the Hays Code. For Clara, it was a chance to step away from the scandalous headlines and focus on a quieter life. But her legacy as a fearless, boundary-breaking star was already cemented. The press buzzed, partly because Clara's love story felt like a rebellion against Hollywood's looming censorship. What made this romance truly shocking wasn't just the pairing. It was Clara's refusal to tone down her personality, even in marriage. She stayed true to herself, pushing against the era's shrinking tolerance for female independence. This boldness, wrapped in cowboy boots and flapper dresses, captured the spirit of a Hollywood that wasn't ready to play it safe. Clara Bo and Rex Bell's love story stands as a dazzling reminder of a time when stars dared to live out loud, and when Hollywood was still wild enough to let them. Jean Harlo and Paul Byrne. Jean Harlo was Hollywood's platinum blonde bombshell before it was cool, lighting up screens with a charisma that could melt hearts and raise eyebrows all at once. But behind her sparkling smile was a romance that stunned the public with its twists and heartbreak. Harlo married Paul Byrne, a powerful MGM executive, in 1932, and from the start, their relationship was anything but ordinary. Byrne was a man of mystery, a creative genius behind the scenes who rarely stepped into the spotlight but wielded enormous influence. Their marriage, though glamorous, was riddled with secrecy and tension. The shock came when Byrne's tragic and sudden death rocked Hollywood less than a year after they said, "I do." The official story was suicide, but rumors flew wild, and whispers of scandal circulated for decades. Some said their marriage was a cover-up for darker secrets, while others painted Byrne as a tortured soul caught in impossible pressures. For Harlo, the tragedy didn't stop her star from rising, but it cast a long shadow. The scandal fueled Hollywood gossip columns and cemented her reputation as a figure caught between dazzling fame and deep personal pain. And yet, she carried on with the kind of bold confidence that made her a true icon of the pre-code era. This romance was a volatile mix of love, power, and heartbreak. One that shocked a nation still getting used to the idea that stars had messy, complicated lives, just like everyone else. Jean Harlo and Paul Byrne's story wasn't just a Hollywood tragedy, it was a mirror reflecting the darker side of the glamour machine. Barbara Stanwyck and Frank Fay. Barbara Stanwyck was the kind of actress who could play a tough, no-nonsense woman long before Hollywood caught on to that idea. She was smart, sharp, and had a screen presence that demanded attention. But off-camera, her love life was just as dramatic, and at times, downright explosive. Enter Frank Fay, a vaudeville star known for his quick wit and even quicker temper. Their marriage was a roller coaster of passion and conflict, one that made headlines not just for their celebrity status, but for the sheer intensity of their connection. Fay's volatile nature clashed with Stanwyck's steely independence, making their union as stormy as it was headline-grabbing. Unlike many stars of the era who tried to keep their personal lives under wraps, Stanwyck and Fay's relationship was an open book of fiery arguments and high emotions. What shocked America wasn't just their fights, but how Stanwyck refused to be tamed or sidelined. She held her ground in a world where female stars were often expected to be nothing more than pretty props. Their marriage didn't last long, divorcing in 1935, but it was a lightning rod for discussions about marriage, gender roles, and the pressures of Hollywood fame. Stanwick's ability to channel her real-life grit into her performances made her one of the most respected actresses of the time, but her time with Faye left an indelible mark on her public image. Here was a woman who could love fiercely, but also walk away when the price was too high. This relationship shattered the myth of the perfect Hollywood marriage and laid bare the raw, sometimes ugly truth behind the glamour. It was messy, it was real, and it was exactly the kind of story pre-code Hollywood wasn't afraid to show. Joan Crawford and Douglas Fairbanks Jr. Joan Crawford was the ultimate survivor in the brutal world of early Hollywood, a woman who clawed her way from humble beginnings to become one of the era's brightest stars. But her romantic life was just as dramatic as her rise to fame. Enter Douglas Fairbanks Jr., the son of Hollywood royalty and a dashing leading man in his own right. Their romance wasn't just a Hollywood fairy tale, it was a complicated dance of ambition, passion, and occasional heartbreak. Fairbanks was known for his charm and good looks, but also for a reputation as a bit of a heartbreaker. Crawford, fiercely determined and savvy, wasn't about to be just another notch on his belt. Their on-again, off-again relationship kept gossip columns busy, partly because it broke all the rules. In an industry obsessed with image, their candid moments of love and turmoil were refreshingly unpolished. Crawford's fierce independence clashed with Fairbanks' more traditional Hollywood swagger, making their relationship a volatile mix of fire and ice. What shocked audiences most was Crawford's refusal to play the role of the passive starlet. She owned her desires and wasn't afraid to speak her mind, even if it meant public spats and broken hearts. Their romance was emblematic of a Hollywood still figuring out how to handle celebrity culture and the private lives of its biggest stars. Though they never married, Joan and Douglas left a legacy of a romance that was as real and messy as the movies they made. It was a snapshot of an era when stars were more than just faces on the screen. They were complex people navigating love, power, and fame in the glare of the spotlight. Colleen Moore and John McCormack. Colleen Moore was the flapper queen, the bubbly star who made the bob haircut and jazz-age lifestyle famous on screen. She was the face of modern womanhood, but behind that carefree smile was a love story that shocked fans with its intensity and secrecy. Her marriage to producer John McCormack wasn't your typical Hollywood romance. Unlike the flashy affairs splashed across tabloids, Moore and McCormack kept things tight-lipped, but the pressure cooker behind closed doors was impossible to hide forever. Their marriage, full of passion but riddled with tension, eventually exploded into one of the era's biggest Hollywood scandals. What made this relationship so shocking was the contrast between Moore's public image and her private reality. To the world, she was the carefree flapper who danced through life. In reality, her marriage was filled with struggles over control, expectations, and the very future of her career. McCormack, powerful and sometimes overbearing, clashed with Moore's desire for independence, creating a dynamic that was both fascinating and tragic. Their eventual divorce was a headline maker, not just because of their fame, but because it exposed the cracks in the glamorous facade. Moore's struggle to balance love, career, and personal freedom was a perfect example of the kinds of stories pre-code Hollywood didn't shy away from. Their story was a reminder that behind every shining star was a human being fighting for happiness, and that sometimes love just wasn't enough to keep the spotlight from burning bright. Marian Davies and William Randolph Hurst. When you think of scandalous Hollywood romances, Marian Davies and William Randolph Hurst's story is right up there, except theirs wasn't just about love. It was a collision of power, wealth, and Hollywood's golden age in full swing. Marian Davies, a gifted comedian and actress, captured hearts not just with her talent, but with a warmth that lit up every room. But her biggest headline wasn't her films. It was her decades-long relationship with Hurst, the media mogul whose influence shaped Hollywood and American news. Their romance began in the early 1920s and lasted nearly 30 years, fueled by passion, but overshadowed by controversy. Hurst was married when they met, and their open relationship raised more than a few eyebrows, shocking a public that wasn't used to such blatant defiance of convention. Hurst's immense wealth meant Davies had access to lavish mansions, yachts, and a lifestyle most could only dream of, but their love story was far from a fairy tale. The press and public were fascinated and sometimes vicious about their affair. Hurst's power shielded Davies from some criticism, but also trapped them both in a complicated dance of public scrutiny and private loyalty. Hurst's famous Hurst Castle was as much a symbol of their grandeur as it was of the era's blurred lines between money, media, and romance. For Davies, the relationship meant sacrifices, including her career being shaped by Hurst's interests. but it also gave her a platform that few actresses could claim. Their love was one of the biggest Hollywood secrets and scandals rolled into one, showing that in Tinseltown, power and passion often walked hand in hand, whether anyone liked it or not. Norma Shearer and Irving Thalberg. Norma Shearer was Hollywood royalty in her own right, the queen of MGM, and an actress whose talent and charm made her one of the biggest stars of the early 1930s. Behind the scenes, however, she was married to Irving Thalberg, the legendary MGM producer known as the Boy Wonder of Hollywood. Their romance was as fascinating as it was discreet, a love story wrapped tightly in the golden cage of the studio system. What made this romance so compelling and shocking was the way it blurred personal and professional lives in a business built on illusions. Thalberg was one of the most powerful men in Hollywood, shaping the careers of countless stars, including his wife Norma. Their marriage was a rare true partnership in a world dominated by studio politics and image control, but it wasn't without its challenges. Despite their public appearances as a perfect couple, the pressures of Hollywood's relentless machine weighed heavily on them. Norma was a star navigating the tricky waters of fame, while Irving was a producer carrying the weight of MGM's success on his shoulders. Their love had to survive not just personal struggles, but the cutthroat nature of the industry itself. Theirs was a story of mutual respect and ambition, but also of sacrifices and secrets. Their romance shocked some because it exposed the blurred boundaries between business and love in an era when studios controlled not only careers, but public images and private lives. When Irving Thalberg died young, Norma was left to carry on alone, but their partnership remains a defining example of Hollywood's golden age, a romance built on power, passion, and the relentless pursuit of perfection. Mae West and George Raft. Mae West was Hollywood's original bad girl long before anyone had the guts to say it out loud. With her razor-sharp wit, bold one-liners, and unshakable confidence, she smashed every rule in the book and laughed while doing it. Mae wasn't just a star, she was a force of nature who rewrote what it meant to be a woman in Hollywood. Then came George Raft, a leading man with a reputation as colorful as the gangster roles he often played. Rumored to have ties to the underworld, but undeniably one of the toughest, most magnetic actors of his time, Raft was the perfect match for Mae's fearless, larger-than-life persona. Their relationship was a combustible mix of sass and swagger that sent shockwaves through the conservative audiences of the early 1930s. Mae owned her sexuality and humor like no other star dared, wielding her quick tongue and sultry charm to push boundaries on screen and off. Meanwhile, Raft played the tough guy role with effortless cool, both in his films and his real life. Together, they were the kind of Hollywood couple everyone whispered about and sometimes openly gossiped about because they shattered every mold Hollywood tried to fit them into. What made their romance so jaw-dropping wasn't just the contrast between Mae's sharp wit and Raft's gritty toughness. It was how they embraced those differences and made them work. Mae's biting comebacks kept Raft on his toes, while Raft's street-smart background grounded Mae's extravagant persona. Their fiery, unapologetic love story wasn't some polished studio romance carefully crafted for the cameras. It was real, raw, and totally unfiltered. Mae West didn't just shock America with her risque films. Her love life was an essential part of her legend. Her affair with George Raft was a vivid reminder that the pre-code era was about pushing every boundary possible, whether on screen or behind the scenes. Their romance, wild, daring, and absolutely unforgettable. Jeanette Macdonald and Nelson Eddy. Jeanette Macdonald and Nelson Eddy were Hollywood's ultimate operatic power couple, mesmerizing audiences with their soaring voices and magnetic on-screen chemistry. Their duets weren't just performances. They were moments that set hearts on fire. But behind the curtain, their romance played out as a quiet ballad, a secret love affair that the studios worked hard to keep under wraps. In an era when every star's private life was carefully scripted by the studios, rumors of Macdonald and Eddy's relationship stirred whispers but never official confirmation. The public only caught hints of their passion in the electric tension that simmered in their films. Every glance, every shared note, packed with hidden meaning. Fans speculated endlessly, debating whether their connection was just professional magic or something much deeper. What made their love story so shocking wasn't just the secrecy. It was the intensity of feelings that neither openly admitted. Both Macdonald and Eddy were married at different points, bound by personal commitments, but pulled by a love too strong to ignore. The studio's tight grip turned their affair into Hollywood's best-kept secret, sparking gossip behind closed doors while protecting their lucrative star images. Their partnership was more than a musical collaboration. It was a complex harmony of love, loyalty, and sacrifice set against the dazzling backdrop of Hollywood's golden age. For decades, fans wondered if their most powerful performances were the ones on screen, or the love story they quietly lived off camera. Jeanette Macdonald and Nelson Eddy's Hidden Melody remains one of pre-code Hollywood's most enchanting romances, a vivid reminder that sometimes the most unforgettable love stories are the ones whispered rather than shouted. Loretta Young and Clark Gable. Loretta Young and Clark Gable were two of Hollywood's brightest stars, lighting up the screen with charm, talent, and undeniable chemistry that had audiences swooning. But behind the glitz and glamour, their relationship was a secret so explosive it could have destroyed careers in an era obsessed with appearances and moral codes. Their affair began when Loretta was still a rising starlet, fresh to Hollywood, and Gable was already the king of the silver screen. The shock came when Loretta discovered she was pregnant, a scandalous revelation in any time, but especially dangerous in the strict, judgmental 1930s. Studio heads, fearing the potential fallout, went to great lengths to cover up the pregnancy. They arranged a secret adoption to hide the truth, burying the story deep beneath Hollywood's polished surface for decades. This hidden chapter revealed the ruthless lengths studios would take to protect their golden goose, both the stars and the bottom line. Loretta's quiet resilience in facing the crisis, maintaining a public image of innocence while battling private turmoil, shocked Hollywood insiders when the truth finally came out years later. But this wasn't just a love story. It was a tale of power, secrecy, and survival in a cutthroat industry where one slip could mean the end of a career. Loretta and Gable's secret became a symbol of the heavy price paid for fame in the pre-code era, a time when the truth was often masked by carefully crafted illusions. Their romance, marked by heartbreak and courage, is a haunting reminder of Hollywood's golden age shadows and the real lives behind the stars we thought we knew. There you have it, the wild, scandalous, and unforgettable romances of pre-code Hollywood that flipped America's idea of love on its head. These weren't just affairs. They were battles for freedom, power, and identity in a world still figuring out what fame really meant. Which of these stories shocked you the most? Drop your thoughts below. Hit subscribe for more juicy Hollywood history, and remember, behind every star, there's always a story waiting to be told.